Hello, everybody. It is me, Everybody's Confusing, and today we're here talking about ReZero Starting Life in Another World, Season 2, Episode 6. Okay, so, man, just because he had to, get returned by death, misunderstandings have to happen. So we saw, him going through the day of, after the first trial where he ends up waking up, seeing that he's alive from getting stabbed. He's like, oh, I died. He looks around, sees that it's right after the trial. And then he sees Amelia, and he needs to do what he did before, where he consoles her, tries to get her to feel better. Like we saw a different scene where she actually gripped onto him a lot harder than before and said his name. And then he was also trying to figure out what exactly Elsa had to do with her being at the mansion, and he was debating, saying is this Frederica's doing? Does Frederica know Elsa or something like that? That's pretty good to have, because that's the only thing that he has, because he doesn't know if this is a witch cult thing, if this is a royal candidate thing. Is it was this person after Amelia? And did the cult have something to do with this? If the cult failed, was one of their fail safe is Elsa for her to show up and then do stuff at the mansion. He was also mentioning how there this time around he would need to get there quicker, which is what he does after getting to the 9 minute mark, where he's going there alone. He's not bringing the villagers with him. He's only going with Ram to go there and to get there quicker to see if he can do something. I'm assuming that he's probably just going to end up dying again because because I'm assuming that Elsa's probably stronger than Ram, since Ram needs I think in the last season she needs to be I guess healed in her where her horn is all the time by Rosewald, so she's probably not going to be able to fight at full power Rem used to be, because Rem was pretty powerful of a person. You know that if she were to get battered by multiple people at a time, sort of when the witch cult was after her, or just a strong witch cult archbishop, then she got down pretty quickly. Subaru, back when they were at the meeting with the pink-haired girl, Lolly chick, and then everyone else, Subaru ends up trying to use his knowledge of the past to make the conversation go by quicker, and he's dominating the picture instead of being more diplomatic sometimes that he is when he gets all the information. But now he's trying to work quicker because of things happens, and he ends up saying that he suggests that he should do the trial. Then they ask him, before, we saw in the last episode that Garfield ended up figuring out that he was able to pass a trial, but then this time Subaru says it before anyone knows anything, because I guess it is right after the trial, and it isn't a day after, a day and a half later that people end up figuring it out. So then he tells them, and everyone's surprised. Even the I already forgot her name, Ruse, the pink haired Lolly, ends up telling him, "Oh, you could pass it. That's interesting." And then even Garfield is like, "Wow, you were able to do it." And then Ram's even surprised, even though that, because he said he told him that it did light up for him too, and he passed it. And then Amelia's just like, "Wait, you passed it? You were able to do that?" And then they ended up asking him questions about it. He ends up saying how there's 3 trials and stuff like that. And I'm really wondering what the other trials are going to be like, because I'm assuming that since the first one was so easy for Subaru, it is harder depending on your past. But I'm really wondering how the difficulty is going to measure up during each one. And then he ends up telling them that he'll do it in Amelia's place, but then everyone just denies him, and they're just like, "Wait, you know, she needs to do it," because I'm assuming that it's because the place that they're in right now, that sanctuary place, is full of halflings, and then Amelia is also a halfling. So if a halfling were to save them, even though that they don't like them, because we found that out last episode that none of them like her, that if she saved them, then somehow, even though that they don't want it to be, it's very confusing, but it's very interesting at the same time. And then Amelia ends up telling Subaru that because Subaru wants to do it instead of her, then she's like, "Wait, do you not trust me?" And he ends up having a misunderstanding again. And then she was like, "No, no, no, that's not what I'm doing." And then Garfield's just like, "Well, I want her to do it too," even though that last episode we saw Garfield say that Subaru should do it. So now Subaru's getting confused because he can't interact the same way with people that he did last time, because more time hasn't passed for people to trust him or get to know him, and now it's a shorter amount of time. So it just gets very funny, and also very just it's you want something to happen like what Subaru wants, but then it can't happen because things need to happen a certain way. So then now his relation with Amelia is, I guess, sort of charred because of that, because Amelia ends up saying how she wants to do it, and that she wants to overcome her past, and that if she knows that if she didn't do it, then things would be bad. So then she does it. So now things are a little bit bad. And we saw Subaru leave her a letter before he left with Ram to get to the mansion before Elsa, to to apologize to her instead of doing it in person. And even Garfield said that, "Why wouldn't you say it in person?" And then she was like, you should apologize for me," as he leaves with her. And then there was even a joke where Subaru was talking about how if Garfield stopped him from going to the mansion, then he would throw Ram at him, and then we saw a moment with Ram where Ram like had like a little bit of a sad expression, and Subaru notices this, and then she's just like, "Well, I remember you actually maybe throwing me as a decoy before in the past," and then Subaru's like, "Oh," and that's where I'm at right now. Before I stopped the episode to record the first bits of this, and then so I'm assuming that she like has visual memories, like she has like feelings, sort of like how Subaru had in like like in the second episode or something, where when he remembered before he took the first trial, when he remembered Ekidono, where he was like, wait, that name sounds familiar, but I don't know why. So I guess we'll see where that goes. But yeah, so far the starting of this episode is pretty good, and I can't wait to see what happens in the middle parts of this episode. I'll be back in a few seconds to review the rest of this. Hey, so I watched around the 9 minute mark to the 17 minute mark, and by the time that we got to the 17 minute mark, wow, shit it just really hit the fan right there with just Elsa coming out of nowhere, holding on to Petra with her blade, just about to like slice her throat, and then everything just hit out. So much different. Just for me, just pausing at the 17 minute mark, like right away, so much stuff happened in that split second. Like literally everyone, like Subaru's like sweating because like he's like, oh my gosh, you got here quicker than I thought, and then like out of nowhere, everyone just gets into battle positions. Frederica somehow like turns her like hands into like I don't know, just these beast hands, and like tries to like stop Elsa and then like whacks at her, and then she's able to also stretch her hair out, or like she's able to like do something with her hair also, and she was able to grab Petra because Petra ran away from Elsa when Frederica went to go and do a claw attack, and then tells Petra to hold on to her hair to like throw her around or whatever, and then just like we also saw Ram use her like use like her wind magic thing like El Flua, and like it just go like nothing happens to Elsa. Elsa's just standing still with nothing happening to her, but the door behind her just explodes into a million pieces, like those double doors just explode, and that's where we're at right now. But then we also had Subaru, like as they're on their journey with Subaru's ground dragon Parsh. They're like on their way there. Subaru ends up telling Ram about Rem and like saying like this is someone that even though you don't know her, I still need to tell you about her. And then we saw that when they got to the mansion, ends up showing Rem, and then like Rem is just staring at Rem, and then she's just like, well, can you leave us alone? I want to just look at this. And she was like, okay, that's a start, and then like leaves and then shuts the door. And I'm really wondering what happened. Like I'm really wondering what her reaction was to seeing like. I'm pretty sure that they're twins, right? I'm really wondering what her reaction was. I wonder if she did something bad, or if she did something good, if she just did nothing, if she like checked over her body. Like I'm really wondering like what that interaction was like. Saw the moment back to go to the Petra thing when he arrived at the mansion door as Petra greeted him, and then Sue was like, "Oh my God! Even though that I didn't see your dead body last time, it's good to see that you're alive." And he goes over and then just hugs her and then just squeezes her, and then she's just like, "Oh," because we do know that Petra does like him. And then Subaru ends up noticing like her tie around her arm. She's like, "Oh, you have that?" And she's like, "Yeah, I made it so that way ours match." And then he just hugs her again and calls her cute. That was a pretty cute moment. Afterwards, we saw Subaru have a conversation with Frederica, and he's like asking her, berating her with questions, like asking if she's a part of like the like the demi-humans in the sanctuary that don't like uh the sanctuary being abolished by Amelia and Rosewald. And then she says, I know nothing about that." I guess she's, and apparently we found out that Subaru and Ram end up telling her that asking her if she's under oath, and I guess like she can't say anything. It's like one of those spells where she can't say anything or else something bad will happen to her. Like I guess she might like die or something. I'm really wondering what type of oath she's under, so she's not able to say anything. But I guess Ram ends up like indirectly like getting her to do something. So they end up saying that they'll like take Frederica Frederica ends up like saying that she won't fight them back because Ram just jumped up when they found out that she wouldn't answer Subaru's questions about even about like her stone around her neck, like teleporting Subaru like where that pink haired lolly was and stuff like that. Like she didn't know anything about that, or she did, and she just can't say anything because we do know that she's taking orders from, assuming, Rosewald, because she did have like a letter in her hand at one point saying like, "Oh, master, I wonder if your plan will go well." And I'm assuming that since she's a maid there, I'm assuming that her master is Rosewald. Because, like I said, Ram just like was about to attack, but then didn't attack. And she's like, "Oh, I understand. So then we'll just take you to the sanctuary." And then Super's like, "Wait, what? We're taking her to the sanctuary?" And she's like, "Yeah, I want." Frederica says, "Yeah, I don't need to stay here. We can just go, because you are forcing me after all." "Oh, yeah, I'm forcing you." So then that's where we're at right now. So far, pretty good meal parts episode with the information and the thing that we got to know and do. Subaru is just like, this is usually his first few tries when he returns by death. They usually don't go good the first time around, or it's like very confusing and he like stumbles a little bit. Then at one point we'll see him go through this at ease, and he'll be able to say the right things and do the right things in order to get that perfect run. So I guess we'll see what happens with the rest of this episode with Elsa and stuff like that. See if he ends up having to return by death again. I'm assuming probably, but at the same time they might be able to get away and maybe hide at the sanctuary. But I'm assuming that Elsa could maybe follow them. So yeah, I'll be back in a few seconds to read the rest ending of this episode. Oh my, that was that was so much information just for the ending bits of this episode. Just so much, man. That ending, man. Just like he's like trying to get information of Elsa. Like Elsa finds him, and then like he's like there, just all bloody from like that piercing in the back and like his hand. He's like walking, trying to get to Rem, but then she shows up, and he like tries to get information, but she's like an assassin, and she like has like an honor code with like her clients, and she's like, I can't say anything. And then she goes in for the kill, and he's like, well, I won't let her kill me. I'll go and save Rem. He goes to open up Rem's door to go and like get in there, but then he ends up in Beatrice's domain in her library, and then the ending of the episode is just him saying, "God damn, why did you save me, Beatrice?" Like, man, that like we do know that he's probably going to end up returning by death again because right now like Petra has lost an arm, she's like dead. Like we saw that like Ram's like hairpiece was also gone, and we saw that Frederica is also dead, so we have three people dead. Only Subaru is surviving with like wounds and everything like that, just bleeding all over. And then now, because like I'm assuming that since that door was Rem's, now Elsa is at Rem's room. So like I'm assuming that next episode he's gonna get information from Beatrice that he'll need to get it. He'll probably have this conversation again if he returned by deaths, and then now now he's gonna have it again. So right after the part where all of them were in the room having a meeting until Elsa showed up with Petra, Subaru ends up like using his Shamrock ability to like create like a distraction in order to stop Elsa from fighting. So then he ends up doing that, and then they end up leaving that room and then like jumping out of the domain, out of the mansion, and onto like the front porch area. And then like Elsa's like in there doing whatever, and then they end up having a short conversation where they're trying to plan what to do, but right before they jumped out of like the window, like Elsa just shot a whole bunch of like needles at them, got like a whole bunch into the back of Frederica. Just like there was like 8 or 10 of those, and then Subaru got like a huge one. Like all of the ones on Frederica look so small, but the one on Subaru is like a gigantic one right in his right shoulder, just bleeding the whole entire time until Petra ended up taking it out later on. And then they're trying to figure out what to do, and then Ram decides that they should all just leave right now with just the four of them, with just Subaru, Frederica, Petra, and her. And then Subaru just gets mad because he's like, why would you leave Ram? What about Beatrice? Now I know that they wouldn't be able to get Beatrice because Beatrice is like a soul or something that's living in the mansion, and like she can leave because we did see her leave one time to protect Subaru, in back in like the Rem Mansion arc, and like that second, like and I guess in the first arc, I guess. So she's able to leave if she wanted to, and if she wanted to escape them, she could also beat them. Maybe I don't know how powerful they are against each other, like Elsa and Rem. No, I mean between Elsa and Beatrice. So then they end up like doing. They end up Frederica ends up like going on Subaru's side in order to save Rem and Beatrice, even though that Ram doesn't want to, and she would rather just save the people that are already there. And then like she says that that even though that she was able to tell that Rem was her sister, that because she has no memory of her, that she doesn't care, and that she ends up putting words in Rem's mouth, like cause saying like if she was my sister, even though that Rem would probably, I think Rem loves Subaru more than Rosewall. Like Rem just assumed that Rem was like her and that she was devoted to Rosewald as much as she is, which was completely wrong. I don't even think that when she, even before she met Subaru, I don't think Rem liked Rosewald. I'm thinking, I'm assuming, I don't know for sure. And then they ended up doing a majority vote where Frederica just rips off her maid uniform. She's just standing there naked in her beast uniform, where she has like furry arms and furry legs, and she ends up using her crystal thing around her neck to turn into like a full beast transformation, and then she turns into like, I'm assuming like a lion or a jaguar, but she's still able to like talk in her human form. Like Subaru asked that, and she's just like, of course, I'm still the same person, even though I don't have a human form. She ends up going like distract Elsa while the rest of them go for Rem, and then she ends up jumping through the window to go and fight her. And then after that, we don't see her ever again. We just see her die slightly at one point. So then Rem and them end up getting into the castle, and they're like walking around trying to like do stuff, but then a mob beast comes out of nowhere. Some like random beast just comes out of nowhere. Now, I sort of been watching this one YouTube channel about Elsa and like another character, and I'm assuming that other character is the person that summoned the mob beast. Which I'm not gonna spoil anything if you watch this far in the video, but I'm assuming that that's what it was, unless it was something else. which is just me. I only know bits and pieces of information. I don't know a whole bunch of stuff. So then they end up having to like hide into a room while this beast comes out of nowhere. And this beast also has a bunch of bats around it. Like there was like many bats around it for some reason. Like like I almost thought that the needles that were thrown at Frederica and Subaru was going to be like poison needles, but I guess they were just damaged needles instead of being poisoned. Ends up like distracting the mob beast and then jumping out the window, and then the beast jumps out the window with the bats, and then Subaru ends up getting Petra ends up taking out the needle from his back since he's like unable to move, and then she ends up putting a bandage on it. Then she wounded her hand, so then Subaru put a bandage on Petra, and that was pretty cute. But then after that, they left the room, and then thing just got crazy. There was just like these shots of just like Subaru with his eyes like with him like losing consciousness. He's just being thrown around everywhere. Like man, that scene was just crazy. And then like after that, he ends up on Parse somehow with Rem, but then Petra is just like gone. And we found out that during that whole entire thing, Petra is just gone. Like the whole entire castle was I mean the whole entire mansion was just collapsing. Like things were just being thrown around and fighting each other. Petrica, I'm assuming, is dead, and then Ram is dead, and then Petra lost her arm, and I'm assuming that we saw her body. She's also dead. Subaru like ended up waking up randomly in the hallway, which Rem was in, or in a random hallway, and he's like on the ground trying to like cover the blood off his eyes, and he sees that he's holding onto Petra's hand still, but just her hand, and he just ends up freaking out with that. So then since he has no hope left in this go around in Return by Death, he ends up looking for Rem, and like I said before, Elsa ended up getting him, and he ended up with Beatrice. So can't wait to see what happens next week, to see how this conversation goes. See if he, like, after he leaves that room, where somehow maybe Elsa will end up in the room, and then he'll get information, because we did kind of find out last episode that Beatrice did want to talk with Subaru. We did see from the ending title, the Maiden's Gospel. So I'm assuming that I guess Beatrice also has a gospel, maybe, or maybe she just has something like that. Because we did find out that she did knew who Beltegius was. So I guess we'll find out what stuff like that will happen. So yeah, this episode was pretty enjoyable. I really liked it. Can't wait to see if he returns by death or not. And yeah, if you enjoyed my review and my thoughts on this episode, leave a like. If you didn't enjoy this episode, leave a dislike. I'll see you guys in the next video or next review next week. And yeah, bye. Have a nice day. See you later.